welcome back to another episode of I'll Allow It Nevada, your go-to podcast for quick insights into Nevada's judicial education. I'm your co-host, Seth Easley, representing the Supreme Court of Nevada Administrative Office of the Court's Judicial Branch Training Unit. In our last episode, we began an interesting discussion on the Nevada Gaming Control Board. Let's jump right back in with our host, Anne Marie Mayo, and our guest, Kirk Hendrick, Chairman of the Nevada Gaming Control Board, to continue our conversation on this organization that plays a vital role in our state.
So there are 6 divisions within the Nevada Gaming Control Board: the administration, audit, enforcement, investigations, tax and licensing, and technology. Can you kind of briefly explain the unique functions of each of these divisions?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. So I'll try to go in the order that we talked about. So administration, that as you would expect, that's the infrastructure of the board. They handle things like accounting, purchasing, contracts, facilities, budgeting, record retention. They also handle hearings for patron disputes, like when someone believes they won a jackpot, but the machine didn't pay what they thought they should have won. And then the division also handles forecasting of gaming tax and revenue for the State Economic Forum, so that we can budget along with the legislature how much money we believe the next biennial session will have. And then, of course, that division prepares and presents to the legislature and the governor's office what the board and commission's biennial operating budget will be. Then audit, we've talked a little bit about the audit division. They're responsible for auditing the Group 1 licensees, which I mentioned earlier. That's those licensees that have annual gross gaming revenue of roughly 3.9 million or more per year. They monitor those licensees for financial health. They evaluate loans and leases. They develop and monitor internal controls that the licensees have to follow. They also conduct audits of disseminators of horse racing information, as well as perform compliance reviews for gaming device manufacturers and distributors, slot route operators, and operators of what's called inter-casino link systems. The enforcement division, we talked a little bit about that earlier. The enforcement division's responsibilities include, obviously, conducting criminal and regulatory investigations. They arbitrate disputes between patrons and licensees. They gather intelligence on organized criminal groups. They conduct employee background investigations. They inspect casino surveillance systems. They approve new games. They approve charitable gaming to include bingo and lotteries. And that one's an interesting side note. You know, Nevada's Constitution doesn't allow lotteries, but it does allow charitable lotteries. So anybody who's been to a professional sporting event in Nevada in the last few years will see they do these 50-50 raffles, and that's a charitable lottery that has to be approved by our enforcement division and ultimately the chair of the Gaming Control Board. Enforcement also regulates horse racing events in Nevada, like those that are held every year in Elko and Ely, which is really important for those communities, raises a lot of money and gets around in the state fairs. It's a great thing to happen in our rural communities. And then, of course, enforcement provides security for board and commission members. Investigations we've talked quite a bit about already. They conduct in-depth investigations into individuals involved in upper-level management or ownership, into private and publicly traded companies. We haven't talked a lot about publicly traded companies, but most people are aware back to the Howard Hughes era. Before Howard Hughes came, you had to be the actual owner of the gaming licensee, and then that ushered in an era where publicly traded companies could infuse money in Nevada and really created growth for the state. Investigations also handles independent agents. They handle nightclub operators that are affiliated with casinos. They handle associated equipment such as tables, roulette wheels, things like that. They handle hosting centers, which is like your companies like Switch that are now, as we talked about, everything's becoming technological. So everything's now at hosting centers in the cloud. And then they assist other regulatory agencies from around the world and around the United States that are either existing other regulators or a lot of times emerging foreign markets will want to come see and meet with Nevada and understand how we've been regulating an industry for the last 7 decades. Then tax and licensing, we've talked a little bit about them. They ensure that licensees there's a database for all licensees. They collect, deposit, they distribute all gaming taxes, fees, penalties. They hold something that's very interesting. This has started in the last few years. They teach a restricted licensee gaming compliance seminar to those who are new and just been licensed for the first time as a restricted licensee. This is like an hour and a half, 2-hour course that really tells them this is how strictly we're going to regulate you, and these are the rules you've got to follow. And then, as we mentioned earlier, they audit the Group 2 non-restricted licensees, those that have less than roughly $7.4 million a year in annual gross revenue. And then technology runs the lab, which is, we mentioned a little bit earlier that it works with innovators of new gaming technology to be sure that they fit within Nevada's regulatory structure. They provide ongoing review by having regular meetings with manufacturers to discuss technological matters, new licensees, things they're working on, things they need our input on. The lab has to approve any devices that must be sure they follow Nevada regulatory requirements. The lab actually has members who go out on a random basis and they inspect gaming technology in use by licensees for compliance. So they'll go out to properties unannounced and see, are the machines out there proper? Are they approved? And are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? And they try to get to every location within every 3 years, I would say. And then, of course, they monitor for regulatory compliance to be sure that licensees are doing what they're supposed to be doing on a daily basis. And then finally, the technology division handles all the information technology infrastructure for the board to be sure that our networks, our application development, all of the sources we use online with licensees, everything's up and maintenance is done and that the board can run on time and make sure that the industry is regulated and the tax is collected.
It's a lot. And most people don't realize how much is involved with all of this.
There's a lot going on for sure.
How does the board interact with the judicial system in Nevada, if at all?
I'd say the most frequent interaction these days that the board has would be the board's enforcement agents having arrested someone for allegedly committing gaming crimes that are prohibited under NRS Chapter 465. When a gaming crime is suspected or reported, enforcement agents who are sworn peace officers, they'll conduct an investigation, and whenever appropriate, they'll arrest individuals suspected of crimes such as past posting a wager, pinching a wager, pressing a wager, sliding dice, trying to cash out someone's ticket that they may have left behind in a slot machine. Good old-fashioned just reaching across a table and grabbing a bunch of chips and running out the door, operating a casino without a license. There's several crimes listed in Chapter 465, and our agents review those and go out and do full-blown criminal investigations. Those would end up in front of your justice courts and district courts. Another area that used to be a bigger one that the courts got involved in was Nevada's list of excluded persons. Historically, that's what's being called the Nevada Black Book. A lot of times people who were nominated for Nevada or entered into Nevada's Black Book would challenge the process in court. Today, however, that process has become well-settled law, so appeals are rare. More likely today, the courts will see a Black Book case when someone on the list sneaks onto a gaming property and is arrested and prosecuted for the gross misdemeanor violation of entering a gaming establishment other than one that's just slot machines only. And currently, I believe there are 37 individuals on Nevada's list of excluded persons.
I don't know why I would have imagined more. It must be pretty serious violations.
Correct, yeah. These are generally considered the worst of the worst. Some other states have extremely extensive lists, and they get into hundreds of people. And that's actually very difficult for a a casino, a gaming licensee to keep track of, because it's their responsibility to be sure that if somebody is on Nevada's list of excluded persons, the licensee must ensure that that person doesn't come on the property. And if they do, they have to notify the Game Control Board, because, as I said, if that person just comes back on the establishment, it's a gross misdemeanor violation to even come on the property. So once you get up past too many of the worst, it's hard. It's a burden on the licensee. So we want to keep it to those that just shouldn't be involved in Nevada's gaming industry, don't have any business being there.
So what are some of the legal challenges that the board encounters, and how can judges play a role in addressing these issues?
Fortunately, gaming law is now fairly settled in the state of Nevada, because we've been regulating legalized gaming for approximately 70 years. Other states that have only recently legalized gaming are facing many of the challenges that Nevada faced decades ago, things like in-state black market gambling, exclusion of patrons for bad acts, cheating crimes, underage gambling, things that they just haven't seen. And then, of course, they're dealing with a lot of times new statutes and new regulations that are being challenged by people who were probably running gray market or black market machines in the state before it became legalized. So there's a lot more challenges in other states. What Nevada needs to do, though, is that we got to be sure that we remain vigilant against things like cybercrime, money laundering, staying abreast of all the technological advances in gaming equipment and systems, and continuing to provide most efficient and effective gaming regulation in the world. That, if we do our job right here at the Game Control Board, hopefully that doesn't get to the judicial branch. And then as gaming expands and becomes more tech-driven, I expect to see more non-licensed entities, kind of like I was saying in other states and other countries around the world, where they're saying, well, my conduct is not or should not be subject to your laws and regulation. As those challenges happen around the world, I could see more people in Nevada trying to say that, well, my activity doesn't really equate to gaming in Nevada, so you shouldn't be able to regulate me. And some of those decisions will be left to the legislature or possibly the courts.
While we pause for a quick break, I'd like to extend a special invitation to our listeners. Owl Out Nevada goes beyond just being a certified legal education podcast. It's designed to be inclusive, welcoming all who are interested. We aim to build connections within our communities and provide valuable insights into the Nevada judiciary. If you've enjoyed our episodes, we encourage you to spread the word and share this experience with your friends and family. Your support is greatly appreciated. Okay, so Kirk, what are some emerging trends in the gaming industry that the board is monitoring? Are there any?
Yeah, I would say what we mentioned earlier, the technological advances are moving at a rapid pace in every industry. So the board is constantly monitoring potential advances between things like financial services and the integration with gaming. Questions would involve things like, can we effectively, securely, and responsibly fund gaming activity? Can we ensure that the Federal Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering laws is being complied with as these new systems are coming into place? And a lot of that will happen because your fintech industry isn't regulated as highly as the gaming industry. So the same piece of equipment that fintech might be using, they want to use over into a gaming situation, but Nevada, again, has to be sure that it collects the right amount of tax. And that's something usually their equipment doesn't do. So that's a big trend. Trends like a lot of licensees now are in multiple states. So a patron might have a sports wagering app on their phone that is specific to Pennsylvania. And then they've got another sports wagering app that's specific to Michigan. And then they've got a separate sports wagering app that's specific to Nevada. And so they'll be wanting what's called a unified gaming wallet, so that the person's activity can be across sports wagering, gaming, and then they will want it to be multiple states so that the person doesn't have to have so many different apps. sports wagering, as you probably heard, since the overturning of the PASPA Act several years ago, is what's caused this explosion across the United States. Nevada's had sports wagering for years, so it wasn't as big of a change for us, except when they come in with all these new other states. They'll use the same technology, and then they'll try to bring that technology to Nevada, and we have to ensure that it complies with our rigorous testing. We have to be sure that it creates all the reports that we have to do to make sure that we get the right amount of tax collected in Nevada. So that's a trend that's going on. Another trend is being sure that responsible gaming is being adequately addressed, and that's something that Nevada hasn't had to really deal with the way these other states are dealing with it. Once they pass a law in another state, these laws have only been passed by legislatures in the last few years. A lot of times the legislature will say, okay, we'll allow gaming, but you're going to set aside so much money for these programs and these social programs. And so I could see that becoming something that Nevada will be asked to address, and it's possibly even something that may be addressed on a national basis. Another hot topic that you would expect is everybody's talking about artificial intelligence right now.
Right.
Just like AI in any industry, it can have its pros and its cons depending on who's using it and what they're using it for. So things like ethical consideration will need to be considered by Nevada's public policy leaders. Questions like, can AI incentivize play gaming to go too far? Could AI be used in a way that it over-incentivizes or overstimulates behavior to the point where the patron may engage beyond their normal gaming parameters? And then what responsibility do gaming operators and gaming regulators have to protect patrons from themselves? Should regulators require operators to monitor spending, things like that? And as I mentioned, there's a lot of pros and cons, and I want to be clear that I'm not advocating or foreshadowing any particular future action by the board. These are simply topics that Nevada and many other gaming regulators around the world will be facing in the future.
So, out of curiosity, you kind of mentioned a little bit of the virtual space when it comes to gaming. Does the board monitor or regulate any online casinos or online gaming?
Nevada only allows sports wagering, which is not considered online gaming in the sense of if you're talking about someone engaged in slot machine play or roulette play or those type of things. That isn't allowed in Nevada. It is allowed in some other parts of the world, but it's not allowed in Nevada. And then you also have what is allowed, which is virtual poker, so that you can play online with other states that are in a gaming agreement. There's several states that have got together to increase liquidity, and Nevada being one of those states. You can play state to state so that you have more opportunities through poker. But in terms of online gaming outside of those two examples, Nevada doesn't allow what you would call virtual or online gaming.
To kind of just wrap up this little discussion, so what are some future challenges that you foresee for the board and the gaming industry in Nevada as a whole?
I mentioned one of them earlier, and that's responsible gaming. I think that's going to be an important topic for Nevada and all markets that have gaming. We could see proponents of responsible gaming pushing to centralize responsible gaming measures such as self-exclusion, self-limits, things that will cover all licensees. Those measures could be raised on a state-by-state basis. And what we talked about earlier, should licensees and regulators be involved in protecting people against themselves? And as I mentioned, it's a hot topic, especially in more recently legalized gaming jurisdictions. And I want to be clear that I'm not speaking for the board, and I'm not suggesting a defined course of action at this time. This could be left to policymakers in our state, but it is something that you asked, what challenge do I foresee? I could see that one coming up, and Nevada's legislature and possibly the board and commission being involved in trying to be sure that Nevada stays on top of such an important topic.
So do you have any final thoughts or messages for our audience regarding the role of the Nevada Gaming Control Board and the importance of gaming industry to our state.
Yeah, I'd say that the role has always been vital to Nevada's economy. As I mentioned, the board was created almost 70 years ago. Next year will be the 70th anniversary of the Gaming Control Board. And the board has, for those 70 years, ensured that Nevada's residents and its visitors who participate in gaming know that the games will be fair, know that the board will collect taxes that are used to make our state such a great place to live in, to work in, to be a part of. And that's one of the reasons I took this job. I started years ago in the Attorney General's Gaming Division, and I was the chief deputy representing the board and commission. So this was a chance for me to come back and give back to our state. And what we've touched on today is only a small piece of what the 400 dedicated agents and employees do for Nevada on a daily basis. And I would say that if anyone wants to learn more, I would encourage them to check out the board and commission's website. That's at gaming.nv.gov. And on there, there's lots of information. There's forms on there. There's links to all of Nevada's gaming statutes and regulations, all in one simple place. And then I'd say if anybody wants to see the gaming regulatory process live, the public is always welcome at the board and commission's monthly meetings, where they can watch them stream live or see the archived events on the board's YouTube channel. And then finally, I would just say I appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit today about Nevada's gaming regulatory system, and appreciate you having me on.
Well, I just want to thank you for taking the time too. I know you're busy, and so I really appreciate you joining us for this conversation. It's been highly interesting for me. I spent some years working in the casino industry, as many people have in this state, and it's very interesting to know what the state is doing to regulate this vital industry.
And Kurt, really thank you for all your work that you do for Nevada in keeping the integrity along with everyone else involved with the board and the commission. Because it is an important part of our state, and we do appreciate all that you do.
I thank you, and thank you for what you do. It's very impressive that you have a series like this, so I look forward to hearing more as they become available to the public.
That'd be great.
Wonderful. Thank you both.
A big thank you to our guests and to all of our listeners for tuning in. Before we wrap up, here are a couple of important reminders. To earn continuing legal education credit, remember to complete a certificate of attendance and email it to jepodcast@nvcourts.nv.gov. If you have any questions, topic suggestions, or comments, we value your input. Please email them to jepodcast@nvcourts.nv.gov. We value and look forward to hearing from our listeners. Stay tuned for more episodes of I'll Allow It Nevada, released every first and third Friday of the month. This is Seth Easley signing off. Take care, Nevada.